Falana, can you hear us now? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Falana, we're trying to get your reaction on the federal government's ban on Twitter operations in Nigeria, citing several reasons. First, that the president's tweet was pulled down, even though some other people have been tweeting things that they consider could threaten the corporate existence of the country, and Twitter has looked the other way. What's your reaction, or how did you receive the news to start with?
First of all, I think we are getting the position of government wrong. In the first stage, we're told that the government was offended, the president was offended by the decision of Twitter to pull down what it regarded as a call for genocidal action, attack on some particular group in the country. What then happened later was that it was a clear case of out of 40 million subscribers, one subscriber, President Muhammadu Buhari, felt that his ego has been bruised, and therefore all other subscribers will have to be collectively penalized. In other words, this is a case of, it reminds you of Louis XIV. Let us say, I am the state. No, we try to make this point abundantly clear. Under the Buhari military junta, Babangida military junta and the Abacha military junta, that state security was different from personal security. At that time, if you offended any official of the government, you'll be grabbed and detained under the state security detention of persons, Decree number 2 of 1984. Yeah, that was it. But we're telling them, sometimes you guys in government regularly threaten the security of Nigeria. Many of the time breach the security of Nigeria by staging coups. How dare you to say, by criticizing you, I have offended or have violated any aspect of the security of the nation? This is what has happened here. Now, if the president was offended like President Trump, now you cannot deny other subscribers access to information via Twitter. That's number one. Number two, the president or the government now felt embarrassed that the reason that juice was not sufficient, hence some attempts were now made belatedly yesterday to adduce some more justifications. And this should not be how we are going to run this country. In the first place, we must appreciate that we are not a conquered people and that Nigerians have fought for their rights, fundamental rights, including freedom of expression. And that was why the Court of Appeal said, in the case of Dr. Atawanko and the state, decided in 1983 in obliterating the provisions of the Criminal Code on sedition. The court urged Nigerians not to allow any government to abolish our right to freedom of expression, which our forefathers fought for. And that is what is going on here.
All right, Mr. Falana, on Saturday, the presidency issued a statement where it says that the temporary suspension of Twitter is not just a response to the removal of the president's post, but says that there has been a litany of problems with social media platforms in Nigeria, citing misinformation and the spread of fake news, which have real-world violent consequences, and that Twitter has failed or has continually escaped accountability. So it seems to be saying that it's not about removing the president's tweet by Twitter. It's because of the crisis that has been thrown up due to misinformation on the social media space. Do you see any justification on their part? using this particular line of argument?
No, the point I'm making is that the government has to be consistent, the government has to be taken seriously, and the government has to behave maturely. You cannot adduce one reason for suspending Twitter today, only to go home and bring out more reasons why we did it. No, it's not okay, it's not consistent. So the point I'm making therefore is that yes, you may have your reasons for wanting to fight Twitter, but the point I am making of wanting to suspend Twitter, the point I am making is that the president or the presidents is not the only subscriber to Twitter. And if you have your problems with Twitter, there are ways of solving that problem without violating my own rights. And on a regular basis, the government issues disclaimers. The government writes rejoinders to information or misinformation by local and international media. I mean, for instance, there was a time that 344 school children were kidnapped in Katsina State. Somebody purporting to speak from the presidency told the whole world via BBC that only 10 students were kidnapped. Now, on another occasion, farmers were kidnapped and killed brutally in Borno State. Again, the same fellow purporting to speak for the presidency of Nigeria, the largest black nation on earth, said, oh, the farmers did not obtain permission before going to the farm. You have even been told now that the late Mr. Ahmed Gula, who was brutally killed in Imo State a couple of weeks ago, did not inform the police that he was going to the airport. Now, these are embarrassing statements oozing out of the presidency, which could lead to a breakdown of law and order in the country. And nobody has said, ban the presidency from speaking to Nigeria. No. What you do as a government, when any report is published, which is not correct, and this is not new under this rate, rejoinders are issued. If a particular medium, a particular newspaper house or television station continues to embarrass the government, there are provisions of the law to deal with such a situation.
All right,
you have a go on.
Yeah, Mr. Falana, many people are wondering, of course, in the thinking of the government, Nigerians are always quick to tweet about what the government is doing and is not doing well, particularly when that tweet came on. Nigerians were the ones that reported to Twitter, which allowed Twitter to take that action that they believed the statement was offensive and could spur up or drag the corporate existence of the country to the mud if not properly handled. But again, the government is saying that there are people who have made even more incendiary statements on Twitter, and Nigerians have not reported. And the government is citing Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, for having made some violent statements also on Twitter, which are still there and has not been pulled down. Yet Nigerians are not reporting that as well.
No. If there is a regime in Nigeria that has enjoyed tremendous goodwill, it has been the Buhari administration. When he came on board, I am going to stop insecurity in the country. I am going to improve the economy of the country. I am going to fight corruption to a standstill. And Nigerians believed, because those were the problems confronting the country under the Goodluck Jonathan administration. So if one by one these problems have not been solved or they have been compounded, Nigerians have a duty and a right under the law to tell the government, you are not getting it right. Now, if you are talking of a nihilist. Or I'm talking of nihilist organizations, of frustrated young people trying to pour out invectives on the country. And many of us, many people, have publicly and privately, where possible, criticized the gentleman you mentioned, Nnamdi Kanu. But what is the duty of a government? This young man is using the territory of another country. A friend going on, by the way. Why are you allowing this? Now you are now blaming Nigerians for demanding their right to access information. Oh, we didn't do it. Oh, you didn't blame Nnamdi Kanu. That is the duty of the government. Citizens can only complain that what this guy is doing may be dangerous or is dangerous. He cannot go beyond that. You were trying him. He escaped from the country. He turned there. What steps have you taken? Have you lodged proceedings in the United Kingdom to have him brought back here? Wasn't the late Chief Enahor, who was standing trial for treasonable felony, brought back from the United Kingdom? So why do you blame us for, with profound respect, inefficiency on the part of the government? And I think this is the issue. Now, the government now complains that yes, your action is lopsided. I mean, the government has alleged that the action of Twitter is one-sided. Twitter has now seen wisdom in the criticisms of the government. Together with Facebook, a number of dangerous tweets by the gentleman you are talking about have now been pulled down. I believe that if government had taken such a step, even in the case of the dispute or the controversial tweet, oh, sorry, we didn't mean it that way. We're simply saying, oh, we are going to deal with those who are policemen and military personnel in the country or burning properties, and nobody will support arson or culpable homicide, whether on the part of the government or on the part of individuals or any group in the country. But the government has to operate under the law of this country, under international law. And Twitter, by the way, can be sued in court if it refuses, if it fails to appreciate that the security of Nigeria should not be threatened. And that is if the organization has threatened the security of Nigeria. But if a government, contrary to the provisions of the Cyber Crimes Act, makes a statement that suggests that the military will be unleashed on the people in this country, or some young people, I beg your pardon, and that is not being addressed. It is a medium that has now said, hey, I think you have gone against your own law. You have also gone against our rules. We are going to pull this down. I think the government should really have drawn some lessons from this experience and be humble to admit that errors were made. That's all.
All right. Mr. Falana, you reviewed Section 39 of the Constitution and citizens' right to freedom of expression of thought and their beliefs. I mean, when you put that side by side with the decision of the Nigerian government to suspend Twitter, would you say that that action of the Nigerian government is unlawful?
The Constitution provides for freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions and impart ideas. Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which has not only been ratified by Nigeria, but which has also been domesticated as far back as 1983, provide that every individual in Africa shall have access to information. But again, every right has limitations. Even the right to life. If you kill another person, you are put on trial, and if you are found guilty, you are going to be killed under our law. In this case, and as I made the point, 40 million people were enjoying their rights to access information through Twitter. One of them has said, oh, I've been offended by Twitter. Therefore, all other citizens who get information through Twitter, who send out information through Twitter, shall no longer enjoy that right. Clearly, that is a serious infringement, a gross infringement of the freedom of expression of all Nigerians who subscribe to Twitter. And the government cannot justify that. Hence, we are now being told, oh, Twitter has consistently embarrassed the government. Hence, we have taken this decision. What the government should do, having realized that an error, a gross error has been made, is to say, since we only suspended Twitter, we are now going to lift the suspension. However, we are going to meet with the management of Twitter so that we can iron out our differences.
All right, Mr.
This is the civilized approach.
Mr. Falana, the government didn't just stop at banning Twitter operations in the country. It also went ahead to say anyone that violates this ban will be prosecuted, and that order has already been given to the Director of Public Prosecution by the Attorney General of the Federation to do that. But despite that, some Nigerians are defying that order, going through the VPN to tweet. What awaits them, and is that order right?
Frankly speaking, I have thought that the Attorney General of the country, the Attorney General of the Federal and Minister of Justice was misquoted when he was reported to have threatened to prosecute anybody who defied the suspension or what he called the ban. As far as his office is concerned, Twitter has been banned, but we're dealing with the suspension as announced by the appropriate agency of the government. And when I was asked by the media, oh, what is your reaction? I said, I have no reaction. You should ask the Attorney General under what law he is going to prosecute any Nigerian who defy the ban, because there is no law, there is no provision of that which provides that anybody who defies the suspension placed on Twitter is liable to be prosecuted in any court in our country. And I challenge the Attorney General or any official of the government to bring out that law that has criminalized the use of Twitter. That's number one. Number two, by virtue of Section 36, subsection 12 of the Constitution, nobody can be prosecuted or punished for a law that has not been prescribed, for an unknown law. So it cannot be at the whims and caprices of a government official to have a Nigerian taken to court and tried for an offense that has not been prescribed. In fact, when I confirmed the statement credited to the Attorney General of the Federation, I asked myself whether we're back to 1984, when Section 3 of the Constitution Suspension and Modification Decree number 1 of 1984 provided that a decree might be published in either through newspapers, television, or any other means. So I was then wondering whether this law that is not being published to Nigerians has been published through any other means. The point I'm making, therefore, is that there is no law in Nigeria today that has prescribed any penalty for any Nigerian that defies the ban, or the suspension of Twitter. And we have offered a service, the Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, ASCAP. And I think Sarah have issued a statement that anybody who is charged in respect of the action taken against Twitter will be defended because no offense has been committed. And again, you also have seen that this action was not well thought out because it has now been confirmed that the government does not have the gadget, the means to ensure the efficacy of its action. The government has not been able to enforce the suspension. Hence, many Nigerians, and I think it was Punch, one of the newspapers that reported yesterday, the number of Nigerians, hundreds of thousands, that have continued to access Twitter through some other platforms.
All right, Mr. Falana, the statement released by the Attorney General of the Federation through his spokesman also said that it's directed the DPPF to liaise with the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy to ensure compliance of the order. My question to you is, one of the means of compliance with that order of the federal government is a directive to the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy to send a notification to the telecom providers to block access of Nigerians to Twitter, since, according to the federal government, it's been banned. In the event where a telecom company, for instance, decides not to comply with the directive to stop access to Twitter, would they also be violating this ban? And can they be prosecuted for that?
A directive of the government is strike law. That a directive of the government that has not been translated or that has not metamorphosed into a law, a criminal law, cannot be invoked to charge any Nigerian with any offense, as far as the Constitution is concerned. In the case of Okafor and the governor of Lagos State, the Court of Appeal made the point that the directive of the governor of Lagos State that all Nigerians living in Lagos State shall remain at home between 7 and 10 every Saturday of every month, the last Saturday of every month, is illegal because there is no law to back up such a directive. Meanwhile, since the days of the military, I think since 1984, became under the Buhari military regime, Nigerians have been observing what you call the sanitation, day, to clean your environment and the rest of them. But this particular lawyer was arrested, and he went to court to challenge his arrest, on a particular environmental sanitation day. And the court said, where is the law banning people from moving in Lagos on the environmental sanitation day? And the Lagos State government could not produce the law. And the court said the directive cannot be used to punish the applicant or the appellant in that case. And that is what is going on here. A directive of the government, however well crafted, cannot form the basis of a criminal prosecution in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Falana, 2019-2020, thereabout, there was a bill, the anti-social media bill, which the government tried to enact at the time, but was met with stiff opposition from the Nigerian public, saying it violates the freedom of information of the people. Is this a ploy, so to speak, of government? Is it a ploy that government is using to actually, make that a law workable through the back door? That is this ban on Twitter that the government has done now?
Nigerians have access to information in the custody of people and other public institutions. Now, if you are going to restrict the right, it has to be done in accordance with provisions of the Constitution. Nobody, and the Constitution has taken cognizance of it. Section 45 of the Constitution has set out the conditions under which a number of fundamental rights can be suspended or abrogated. First of all, there has to be a state of emergency declared, and to ensure that there is no abuse on the part of the president, he shall publish the emergency rule, section 305 of the Constitution. And as soon as that is done, we will have to send it to the President of the Senate and the Speaker, who shall convene separate meetings of both houses to debate the imposition of emergency rule and vote for it. If it is endorsed, yes, the President can go on to restrict the movement of it. If it is not endorsed, that is the end of the emergency declaration. But without declaring a state of emergency, the government cannot take certain actions. And in the case of Falana and the Attorney General of the Federation, we went to court when the Nigerian Army in 2019 said all Nigerians were going to be subjected to what they call positive identification. Everybody will have to identify himself on the road, either with your driving license, voter's card, passport, and so on and so forth. And they said, by the way, are we under an emergency rule in Nigeria? And I wrote to the chief of army staff, please stop me. Or they just ignore me. We went to court. And the court made the point, apart from the Northeast region, Northeast zone, where a state of emergency was in place, you cannot, as the Nigerian Army, go around intimidating civilians on the road. If there should be a check on Nigerians, that is a duty vested, that is the power vested in the police. So there are decisions of our courts. In all these, situations, that the government is advised to familiarize itself with decisions of our court on Chapter 4 of the Constitution, the fundamental rights of Nigerians, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Once the government can, try to familiarize itself with this decision, there will be no mistake, there will be no problems, there will be no controversy unnecessarily.
All right, Mr. Falana, there's also been the argument that the federal government would have used the legal option, but because Twitter is not a juristic person in Nigeria, it cannot explore that option to bring some level of compulsion and compel them to act in a certain way in which it feels is appropriate in the context of what we are talking about. Is that absolutely correct? Can Twitter be sued in Nigeria?
Our law has gone beyond that. There are institutions that can be sued in Nigeria, and when you get the judgment, you can register the judgment in any part of the world. And in any case, even if you cannot sue Twitter, you can sue Twitter in the United States of America. And there are people who have taken this media to court, and they have obtained judgment. So we must behave like a civilized set of people, so that we do not unnecessarily attract odium, and that is what is going on. We don't need to go through all this. We don't need to put the jobs of thousands of young people in disarray. We do not need to violate the human rights of people to freedom of information or freedom of expression. If the government had been more circumspect, Twitter would have been embarrassed. If the government had compiled what can be regarded as excesses of Twitter, the case of the government would have been well made. But having suspended, you are now looking for justifications. For me, that wasn't quite neat. And that is why the drawing table, right? And find a way of having this matter resolved.
Okay,
so that we can move on.
Okay, so how do you think the government can resolve this matter now before we go? What do we do at this point? Millions of naira is being lost every day, according to reports, by this ban, and at a time when the economy is actually very bad and Nigerians are struggling to survive. How do we do to quickly resolve? What do we do, or what does the government do to quickly resolve this problem?
First of all, I think the government will have to create an enabling environment for peace to reign in our country. And we must be very serious about this. I mean, one of the allegations against Twitter, they had a lot of reports during the NSAS protest. Nobody was killed in Nigeria. And the organization reported that people were killed. Again, I do hope at the appropriate time that the government will apologize to Nigerians and the international community. Because only on Saturday, the chief pathologist in Lagos State gave evidence on oath before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry that within a week, 99 people were killed in Lagos. Their corpses were deposited in the mortuary. And out of the lot, we have established that three were brought from Lekki. Meanwhile, you have been told by the Nigerian army and by the government that nobody was killed. Now, in the particular case on hand, some of us have insisted that if this government or if the federal government had negotiated to have peace in the Niger Delta with the young men who took up arms against the state, young men and women who took up arms against the state for environmental pollution, for exploitation of the Niger Delta region. If the government, this particular government, had granted amnesty to certain terrorists and enter into dialogue with terrorists, we have insisted, therefore, having regard to such precedents, that the government must negotiate with all the young men and women who are demanding for their own country, who are making separatists, who are advancing separatism for what they believe is a way of fighting injustice, lopsided appointments, nepotism, exploitation in our country, unemployment, and so on and so forth. So the government must learn to tolerate all Nigerians, and where necessary, sit down with them and convince those who are saying, let the country be disintegrated. Convince them why they should continue to have faith in a united Nigeria. What the ruling class calls, I think in section 2 of the Constitution, that Nigeria shall be an indissoluble state, an indivisible state. You must convince those who are asking for Pakistanization, balkanization of the country, disintegration, that no, we must continue to have Nigeria as a united country. But you cannot arrogantly say, we are going to crush you. You guys were too young when we fought the Civil War. And in any case, in which school is the history of Nigerian taught? Are these young people, have they been taught what Nigerians went through during the Civil War?
All right, a good point to hang up the discussion
so
there.
Much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Error-Femi Falana. It's been a pleasure having you for your very insightful perspective, legal perspectives to